All right, so welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining, and sorry for the always eventful initial technical difficulties. I am Beatriz Diaz Acosta, and I will be talking to you today about some resume tips and also interview tips. I actually, when I got down and prepared this presentation, I realized there's a lot of context that I like to offer. So this will be a lot more than just resume workshop. It's really all things college recruiting. So hopefully the additional context will help you write a better resume that will get you to your goal of landing your dream job in industry. And I will probably go fast in some areas just so that I don't use up all the time, but during the Q&A, you can ask me to go deeper in any of the things that I touch on. So welcome. A little bit about me. I got my Master's of Science in Computer Science at Virginia Tech way back in 2004. And after that, I joined industry. My first job was at Microsoft, where I worked for 11 years. Then I decided I wanted to try a startup, which is this company that you probably have never heard about called Hearsay Systems. After that, I joined Amazon to work in the Alexa machine learning team. And at the end of my career, I spent a few years in Facebook, Meta, now Meta, also working on machine learning related projects. And now, as of spring this year, I'm actually now, I switched gears and now I'm teaching computer science in Seattle University. But more importantly, my experience in industry. So I have been a software engineer, a program/product manager, and an engineering manager at these various companies for a lot of time. And as an engineering manager, and even as a software engineer, participated a lot in recruiting, especially college or university recruiting, which is usually a special avenue for candidates to come into, especially for big tech companies like Amazon and Microsoft, Google, Facebook, etc. So these are some of the projects that I worked on, not as relevant for this conversation, but just wanted to put it out there. But yeah, I mean, pretty much I've been recruiting since my second month in industry. When I started my job at Microsoft, after a couple of months, I was invited by the recruiter, the university recruiter that maintained relationships with Virginia Tech. She invited me to come and join them for the career fair. And the career fair is definitely a great place for you to get started in your journey to try to land either an internship or a full-time job. So starting with the context, there are many core technical roles that you can apply for when you are looking at open positions in these different companies. But the main one and most important one and the most common one is the role of software engineer, which could be called software design engineer, software developer engineer, software engineer, it's the same thing. But there's definitely different things that you might do as a software engineer. You might end up focusing on a front end or on the back end, or you might be doing full stack development. You might decide to specialize on a specific area of development and say focus on mobile, for example, which is great and very popular and very needed. You may decide to focus on machine learning, which is also taking over many of the data intense practices out there. You might want to do hardware. So many different areas that you can end up becoming a software engineer at. You also could be applying a different discipline. I came up with the denomination as discipline. It may not be the best one, but what I mean here is you might end up being a quality assurance engineer or test engineer that's really building software to test other software, to allow people to find bugs as early in the process as possible and maintain a quicker turnaround for shipping as well as deployment. You may be attracted to production engineering, which is more about maintaining clusters of machines for either serving content and applications or for, say, training very large machine learning models and the like. And there's many others that I could come up with here, probably security, etc. So software engineer, that is most of the jobs out there are for software engineering. You might also have heard of program/product management. which is more, it's still very technical, should be very technical, especially in these companies. We appreciate very technical program and product managers, but you're doing more of the communication and the planning and the strategy and interfacing engineers with other disciplines. And this is a great role and a really fun role. And a lot of, young grads might be attracted to this role, but I would actually prefer working with program managers that have been software engineers before. So I would recommend for new grads to apply for the software engineering type roles first and, master that role for a few years before trying to switch gears and try the product management role. That is my preference. Other people might think otherwise, but if you would like to land an internship or a full-time job straight out of college in program product management, it is possible. Data science is a new one that has come out, well, new one for me, I guess, but very common nowadays. And this is also, I'm not sure if only computer science students are here in this talk, but if you're in math or other related field and you've done a lot of data analytics and statistics and forecasting, and that's the kind of thing that you think you want to do, then data science is yet another very popular core technical role that is out there. And it does vary a lot across companies, but it's a fun one too. So these are the core technical roles. Why am I talking about this? Is because I think that when you're writing your resume, you kind of have to have an idea in mind of which job you want to do so that you profile your resume and make it really strong for that role that you want. And we're going to talk a little bit later about the different sections in the resume that I would like to see as a hiring manager. And one of them is that the objective. And in the objective, you're going to tell me, hiring manager or recruiter, what you're looking for. I would like a software engineering role, or I would like a program management role, or I'm looking for a data scientist role. This is already opening that conversation and allowing me as a recruiter or hiring manager to connect the dots in the right way and get the best pairing possible, the best match possible. Then another decision that you need to make is whether you're applying for an internship or you're applying for a full-time role. So if you are junior, sophomore, freshman, definitely go for an internship, right? You want to get as much experience under your belt as possible, and spending 12 weeks in the summer working for a tech company is really a beautiful experience. It's usually well paid. Internships are well paid in this world. You'll get housing, you'll get your travel expenses covered, and a variety of perks. Back in my when I worked at a startup, one of the cool perks for interns was that they could keep the laptop that we would issue as a company laptop, and people went home with this awesome MacBook Pro 15-inch, and they didn't have to pay for them, and that, I think that's a really great perk. Other perks, events, training, of course. Back in the day in Microsoft, this doesn't happen anymore, but interns got to visit Bill Gates' house for a barbecue at the end of their internship. No longer happens, but you get the idea of the kinds of events that you might get involved with as an intern in one of these big tech companies. You get to work in real projects. The projects are scoped for the time that you'll be in the internship. So for 12 weeks, it should be a project that you can ship in 12 weeks. And also adapted to your skill level. And so you won't be handed, the hardest part of the project. You'll be handed something that your manager and mentor think that is doable by somebody coming in with your skill set. And that's also something that you will be including in your resume when we get to that part. You'll get a mentor, you'll get a manager, you'll work with other engineers, full-time engineers that will become your peer mentors. So it's again, wonderful, very, very cool experience. When I was doing my master's, I actually did not take my own advice. I did not do an internship during the summer. I wanted to instead focus on writing my thesis. But a lot of my friends did go get internships, and they had a fabulous experience. And to this day, I'm like, wow, why didn't I do that? I still work, things worked out for me, but just don't, if you have an opportunity to do an internship, please go ahead and do that. If you do well in your internship, then you pretty much have a return offer for either a future internship or a full-time job if you're close to graduation. So that's another great way of, landing an awesome job. Now, if you're a senior this year, you're graduating in December or in June, then you'll be applying for full-time roles. And this will still be part of the university recruiting pipeline for most companies. You're usually considered a university candidate if you are either enrolled in school or have at most graduated within a year. If it's been more than a year since your graduation, then you will probably be considered as an industry candidate, and the process is similar but different. So hopefully most people in this webinar are, fall into the category of currently being enrolled as a computer science student or less than a year away from graduation. As a full-time applicant, you'll be looking at entry-level roles. There's plenty of them. Some companies hire for the company, and some companies hire specifically they'll match you for a specific team, and you'll interview for a specific team. What that means is if you're company-wide, like Facebook, you will not, when you get your offer, you will not know which team you're going to work for. You actually come into the company and then do a boot camp for a few weeks. And during that boot camp, you meet the teams that have available positions, and you make a match while inside the company already. In other companies like Microsoft, you actually interview for a specific team. Again, just like with an internship, you usually get an onboarding plan that's crafted. You'll have a manager, you'll have a mentor especially for the onboarding period. And if you don't land the project of your dreams or the team of your dreams in that very first offer, get your foot in the door, because after a year or two, you'll be able to apply to a different team if you want to. And it's going to be a lot easier than coming in from the outside. And in some companies, you do have to interview again, but it's a lot less complicated, and it's more of a just like checks and balances, making sure you're still staying technical. And in other companies, it doesn't require an interview. It's just more of you meet the hiring manager, and if there's mutual agreement that this is a good idea, then you go ahead and switch teams. So don't get discouraged. You can always switch teams and find that awesome project or team that you didn't get the first time around. Let me see. I see now questions coming in, so I want to make sure that. Internships. Yes, this is a great question. So for seniors that do want to continue on with their education and get a master's degree, that means you can definitely apply as an intern to get an internship in the summer before you start your master's. And so I think this will be part of the education section. I don't have an example specifically like this, but a way I would do it is in your education part of your resume, indicate that you will be enrolling to a master's in fall of 2022 or fall of 2023. That way, and in your objective, you'll say, I'm looking for internships, because even though I am a senior graduating, getting my degree, I will be doing a master's next year or next term. So that's a great question. And yes, I think that's a really cool thing to do if you want to continue with your education and get a master's. Definitely get an internship in between. All right, I'm going to close this. And more context. Last slide of context, I think, before we get to the resume slide, is the recruiting pipeline. So resume submission is just the first part, and hopefully, if you do things well, then you'll get to the next stage of the recruiting pipeline, and the next stage until you finally get an offer and you start your first day at the company of your choice. But one part about the resume is not just the writing of the resume, but how you submit it. And each will have varying degrees of success. If you attend a career fair, this is like my number one recommendation. Make sure if your university offers a career fair, be there, and be there for as many days as the career fair lasts, and meet with as many potential employers as you can in person, because these career fairs are giving you the opportunity to meet a recruiter or an engineer from the company in the flesh. and they'll spend, they'll try to spend some time with you, 5 minutes usually, because there's a line, especially for the more popular companies. So having been on that other side of the career fair, I would do my best to try to get to know each person in those 5 minutes. And so I would take a glance at the resume and dig in on projects and start asking really technical questions about the choices that the person made in the project, because I want to make sure that the person in front of me is as technical as possible, so they will do well in the technical interview process and they will do well and land a job eventually. So career fair is the best, will give you the most success rate, conversion rate, if you want to think of it that way, to land a technical phone screen or on-campus interview, which is the next step in the recruiting pipeline. If the company that you want is not represented at a career fair, then you might try to figure out in your network of friends that have graduated or have interned, if you can find a recruiter contact in that company, so that you can then, reach out to them and send your resume through them. Or you can also ask that friend or friend of a friend to submit your resume through an internal referral system. So most companies will have internal referral systems. And I always, if anybody ever ping me and send me the resume an email and ask for a referral, I will always do it and put that referral from within. Is more likely that a recruiter or hiring manager will see that resume coming in through the internal referral system than through the online, public application portal, which is my last choice here. So if that goes well, then the next step is some form of screening, which might happen over the phone or might happen on campus. If that goes well, and this is usually technical and most likely involve coding. So you have to prepare for that, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. If that goes well, then you get invited to do a full loop. Sometimes full loops happen on campus if there's such an event. Sometimes they happen on site. They'll fly you into a site. Now with the pandemic, a lot of the recruiting was done via video, so I'm assuming a lot of that will continue because it saves costs and traveling. So some of it might happen through video. The full interview loop, if you're doing an internship, it might just be a couple of technical interviews and maybe one team match interview. So it's a lot less heavy. But if you're applying for a full-time role, it's probably more around 5 interviews, most of them technical, most of them coding. There might be one about this systems design, especially if you have more experience, but not necessarily. And there might be one behavioral interview that focuses more on your growth and your leadership style and communication style and the like. If you do well, you'll get an offer. Hopefully you get multiple offers and you have to pick one. And then you start at your first day, and maybe you'll come back to campus and be in the career fair trying to recruit more friends into your company. I see some questions. Let me see real quick. A resume is still read by humans. I did read a lot of resumes as a hiring manager, and intern resumes too, because once your resume is not just going to get you in the door, it's also a way that hiring managers will get to know you, even if you've already passed the interview. Recruiters will try to find multiple teams interested, and not only does the hiring manager get access to the interview notes, but they will look at your resume to figure out who you are. So I definitely read lots of resumes when trying to pick interns for my teams. So yes, humans do read resumes. I mean, maybe not the initial, not the first screen, but later on, it will be seen by multiple eyes for sure. I'm not sure about this one. I'll come to back later. Recruiters' contacts. I do think recruiters are all different. So some may prefer to be emailed directly. Some may prefer to be pinged via LinkedIn. But I do know one thing is recruiters are very motivated to find good candidates, whichever way. So I think it's totally fair game to email them directly. I work with a lot of recruiters that when we come to different universities to do a presentation about how to get a job at, Microsoft, Facebook, etc., that the recruiter at the end of the talk will put their email, on a slide and be like, email me. If you didn't bring your resume today, send it to me. If you have questions, email me. So I think most university recruiters for sure will be motivated and will be happy to receive inquiries via email. But I'm sure there's an exception to that statement somewhere. So let's see. Yeah, screening. We'll get back to that. All right. So now let's look at the resume structure. And let me check my time. Okay, we're half an hour in. I'm doing well. So this is not, again, hard rules, but this is what I personally like to see in a resume coming from, university recent grads or current students, whether undergrad or graduate. I want to see the objective. I want to see that 1 to 2 sentences that tells me what it is that you're looking for. Even if you're like, I'm not so sure, I just want a job. It's dig in a little deeper. What is it that you like about computer science? What is it that you like about, maybe you're interested in mobile development, web development, machine learning, security, whatever it is that you're interested, what the thing that makes you happy about this beautiful field you're in. I think that should be in the objective, because that way, not only one is showing your passion for technology, which we want to see in all of our engineers, but 2, it will help recruiters match you to the right teams. It will help hiring managers consider you for their teams. So definitely put it in there. And even if sometimes the objective could even be something that is not something you already mastered, right? Like you don't have to be a senior mobile developer to want to work on mobile development. And I definitely saw people coming into my team that were like, hey, I would love to work for your team that's doing machine learning work, but I'm a backend engineer, but I want to learn. Do you have need for backend engineers that, and yes, the answer was always yes, I do have need for backend engineers. And then my backend engineers would pair up with our PhD research scientists and learn about machine learning. And within a year, they would be doing pretty much everything that my machine learning engineers were doing. So that is also a place to, write down what it is that you would like your job to be, even if it's not the first job that you get. So it's important to write that objective, and hopefully you can personalize. I know this takes a lot of time, but if you're applying for, say, your top 5 companies that you'd like to land a job in, personalize the objective to those companies, so that you are writing about the job that you would like in that specific company, the kind of role that you're looking for in that specific company, or the projects that you'd be so excited about to work, even if you don't land it in the first job, but it tells the company you're a person that we should invest in because they have that passion and they want to work on these things. Education, there's always a section about, which university, what degree you attended, where you're at, GPA, that kind of thing. But what I mentioned earlier is that you might want to also add relevant computer science coursework that you've already done. And this is particularly useful for non-seniors or non-graduates, because I want to know as a hiring manager if I can match you to the right project depending on how much schooling you've done. So maybe I want to make sure that you at minimum have done coding and data structures, right? Otherwise, how are you going to, come and contribute into our project as an engineer? Or my project that I have in mind has a lot of database creation. So I want to make sure that you know how to design databases. Therefore, I will want to see databases as part of your coursework that you've already taken. And so on and so forth. Or maybe you really want to work on graphics, and I'm like, why would you? And but then I see that you've actually done graphics in your CS coursework, and I'm like, oh, okay, this person has the theory down, so we can throw them into that project. So relevant CS coursework, that does not mean a copy of your transcript or list all the classes that you've ever taken, and you'll see the examples in a minute. Experience. If you have experience, if you've done an internship in a relevant field, in a relevant company, this is great. Of course, you're going to put it in your resume. Do describe the problem that you solved, the outcomes, what was challenging, as briefly as possible, but not just, I was I don't know, I was an intern at this company, but we want to say, hey, which project did you work on and what was your role and what was tricky about it? And definitely focus on your personal contributions. You're always working in as part of a team, but what's important is, what did you do? Projects. This is also part of experience, but I call it out separately because I think a lot of students don't feel right about including their projects from coursework in their resumes. And I think it's completely fair game. And you should pick the projects that were most technically challenging and that you're most proud of. And maybe the projects where you went beyond the requirements for, just passing the class. And you can also use this space to link to examples of your work, whether on GitHub, or if you have a portfolio, or maybe you've created apps or sites that you want to link to, that's great. But yes, projects from school, totally fair game. I want to see them. I'd rather see that than fluff. So, but curate the list. Make sure that it's the beefier projects that you've worked on that you include here. If especially if you don't have previous internship experience, that kind of thing, it's good to add these projects to strengthen your resume. And there should be a section on programming languages and technologies that you're familiar with. And I will show some examples that do a good job of doing this, but I will go an extra recommendation is to rate your proficiency and be very explicit. I have advanced knowledge of these things and intermediate of these things and basic of these other things, right? So that when people don't just assume that because you put Python on your resume, you're a master in Python, or you just barely know Python. It is good to have that clarity going in. So now that I have this, I'm going to show you some examples, and then we'll come back to the, let's see if I have my examples here. I think it's in this one. Yes. All right, so let me get out of the Chrome. So I actually went online and looked for, hey, computer science student resume examples. And I found this site hosted by Carnegie Mellon that had sample resumes that I liked. The kind of resumes that I would look for as a hiring manager. And what I really love is that they specifically call out, a freshman sample resume. So what do you do when you don't have that much experience? What do you put in there? An undergraduate sample resume, senior sample resume, graduate student sample resume. So I will share this link with Julia so she can share it with you all. Or you can just Google it and you'll find it right away. But these are really cool examples and some things that I like. For example, this very first one, it's great. It has the information that I need. It's clean. Maybe it doesn't have all the bells and whistles and format and colors. To me, that's actually better. I prefer a straightforward resume like this. They have an objective. Yay. The objective itself is not great because it's not super specific, but they have an objective. Yay. They have their education section. They include high school because, freshmen, but you don't really need to include high school unless you got a 4.0 GPA, which might be impressive, and maybe, yes, throw it in there. Coursework, here we go. The part that I told you about, including computer science classes that you've taken already. Here you go. I know that this person already took Intro to Programming. So yes, I can throw them into a programming internship. Perfect. So projects. So here, they call out a homework project, and it's a cool game. Maybe a bit more description would be cool, and talking about the challenging bits would be cool here, but I'm glad that this person has included their projects, even if it's a school project, totally valid. And now work experience, tutoring, yes, I interned for this person, yes. Technical skills, they do say proficient in Python. So, and if you are going to call yourself proficient or advanced, make sure you truly are, because then the questions, people will ask you about it, and will ask deep questions about it, and you should have answers for those questions. And some activities and honors, because again, this is a freshman, they don't have a lot of experience, they don't have a lot of projects. So there's some other stuff that they, talks about their leadership qualities and the like. But this area of activities and honors probably will start shrinking so that you make more room for experience and projects as you go through your education. So now let's look real quick at this other one, which I think it's supposed to be an undergraduate student. Here we have more formatting, and I've seen this format seems to be popular at the moment, with one small column either on the left or on the right, and one larger column. And the skinny column will have things like skills and coursework and links to, say, GitHub, LinkedIn, etc. And I think, yeah, that's cool. I personally don't find this harder to read. And when I'm standing in a career fair and I'm looking at your resume, I want to be able to read it super fast so that we can have a meaningful conversation in the 5 minutes that we have together. So not crazy about the format, but it's cool if you like this kind of format. And then I love that, this includes experience. Part of it is making Android and web apps. They talk about their specific role. They led a 3-person team. Really nicely done. And projects too, right? So again, because this person is in undergrad, they probably are not done yet and they don't have that much experience, but they can include projects that they've done as part of school or as a part of some other activity. And that's great. I think that's really good that they included that. Sorry, my phone is ringing. Hopefully you're not hearing it. And then there's this section of activities, which I personally think should be a lot smaller. I think there's information here that's cool, especially this mentoring and volunteering, but it's way too big compared to the rest of the resume. It's occupying too much space. I would much rather see a 3rd and a 4th project than, this much in the activity section. So just a criticism of this example and what I would like to see. And there's other really good ones. Again, this one's back to the plain text sections, which I like because for me, this is much easier to read. And again, this person did a good job of putting their selective coursework and their coding skills. I would add to this one, I would add the level of proficiency so that it's clear where they have most experience in, experiences, projects. And you see the activities kind of fell off because maybe they didn't have anything super powerful that would take away space from projects and experience, which are more important at this point in time. So you definitely have to make a decision. But the meat of the resume should be the experience and the projects, in my point of view. So these are some examples. We'll share them if you want to take a closer look at these. I think it's very helpful to see the examples. And I see some questions. So let's see if years of experience in different languages. That's a fun one. I mean, maybe that's a way to express your proficiency if that's the way you feel more comfortable. I think I've done the advanced, intermediate, basic, but if you feel more like, hey, I have 5 years experience using Python, that too conveys that level of information. So that I think that's totally valid. So yeah, two related questions, whether you want years of experience or whether you want advanced. Like, to be honest, for example, I have several years of Python experience, but I do not consider myself advanced at Python. I would much rather consider myself advanced at the C# and C++ families of languages, because that's where I really know what's happening under the hood. I can tell people about memory management. I can tell people about how the decisions that were made in the standard template library to code up hash tables, right? Like I can go that deep, and that is the depth that I would expect from advanced, not just years of using the language, versus really truly understanding what's going behind the scenes. I don't know. There's a little nuance there. So, but I do think years does provide useful information. So if that's what you feel comfortable sharing, then go for it. So, all right, I am going to go to the next one because there's questions on that. So I have to stop sharing. Maybe I should have just shared my screen instead of specific apps, but going back to the presentation, now that we've seen some resumes, you saw all these sections in examples. Sometimes if you really are lost, but now you've seen some templates, but if you really are lost, you can always ask the recruiter, if you have a recruiter, to ask in career fair situation or presentation or the like, if they have a template, if their company has a template. We, when I first was going to visiting colleges on behalf of Microsoft, we found that a lot of students didn't know what to put in the resume. So we took it upon ourselves, the recruiter and the engineers. We put it together a little template, and we would share the template in the beginning of our presentation. And at the end of the presentation, people would have typed in their personal information into the template and send it to us, right? Because we would much rather have that than no information at all. So sometimes there's templates available. It's probably less common now, but it's always worth asking if you really are lost. But keep it clean, keep it easy to read. Don't overdo the format or the fancy, placements and layouts. It should all fit in one page for sure. I've been in industry for 17 years, and my resume is 1.5 pages long. So yours should definitely fit in one page. And focus on those projects and focus on the experience. Avoid not putting something that you're not prepared to discuss knowledgeably, right? Because then that would be embarrassing. And as you might want to remove, as you gather more experience and more projects, you may then start wanting to remove non-career related work experience or activities or the like, right? Like you saw in the examples, the transition from a freshman resume to a senior resume. The senior had a lot less or had no activities, whereas the freshman did, and honors, right? So again, you have to pick the best of each, and but really focus on the meat, which is experience and projects, and not let the other things take over that space. And we went through the samples. So let's say your resume gets through and you land an interview, and congratulations, now you have to prepare for the interview, whether it's a technical screen or an on-campus interview. And you should actually, I would recommend always be preparing for interviews, because it's definitely something that you get better at with practice. Practice is what's going to help you think a little quicker on your feet, as well as be less nervous, and as a result, be able to convey more of your skills to the interviewer. So for interviews, you have to prepare. I saw in the Q&A, some folks mentioned LeetCode. Yes, that's an excellent resource. There's a lot of sites online that provide interview questions that you can try out. My favorite book out there is Cracking the Coding Interview. Has lots of great, not just sample questions, but just also context about, hey, make sure you review your concepts, make sure you know these specific basics about design. And that is a very nice framework for remembering those things and then putting them to practice. And specifics about some coding languages and specifics about some companies. So it's a great book. I have a hard copy of this book, and I've used it. This book didn't exist when I was applying for jobs the first time around, but I've used it afterwards to apply for jobs within my company, as well as when I changed companies. And I think it's a great resource. For system design, so we always talk a lot about coding interviews, and yes, that's what you're going to see when you're applying for internships and for entry-level positions. But later on, you're also going to be seeing system design interviews, the kind that somebody will come in and be like, how would you design the Twitter backend? Super ambiguous, super open-ended, no right answers, but the interviewer wants to see how you attack the problem and if you have a framework. And there's a site called educative.io that has a system design course online. Part of it is free, and the free part is enough. You don't have to pay the $80 or whatever for the full course. It has some good examples, and it offers you a nice framework so that you can think through the things that you have to think through when you're doing, you're doing big system design, whether it's backend, caching, security, load balancing, you name it. And that way you'll have those things fresh in your head, and you will be able to draw the boxes and then dig in deeper into some of those boxes with your interviewer. So that's a good one for system design. As I mentioned before, you will have potentially a behavioral part of the interview in which the questions usually explore things like empathy, having a growth mindset, being able to take criticism and grow as a result of it. Those are the kinds of things you'll be asked. And I think for entry-level jobs and internships, this is not super deep, but as you become more experienced and are doing these interviews as an industry candidate, you will amass experience, and it's good to, as you prepare for interviews, write down some stories that support either an example of growth mindset, or an example of empathy, or an example of leadership, or an example of conflict resolution, so that you don't waste time in the interview trying to remember the time when something like this happened to you. Just by having prepped it in advance, you'll be able to talk about it quicker and not waste time during the interview. Be sure to make good friends with your recruiter. Once you're in touch with a recruiter anywhere, they're there to help you, to be honest. And I've had really great relationships with my recruiters in the past, and they have helped me immensely. So definitely make friends with your recruiter. Start building your network. This is the best time to get started. You're in school, you have lots of friends. All of these friends are gonna be places in a few years, and that network, keep it alive, because it'll help you not just now, but in the future. And yeah, again, did I say prepare for your interviews? Yes, prepare for your interviews. Do a lot of coding. Depending, some of the interviews happen in person, which means whiteboard. So you should try practicing on paper or a whiteboard, talking through your thinking process as you're solving the problem. And some interviews will be online, in which case you will have a text pad and you'll be typing, and there will be no IntelliSense or things like that to help you out. But you should practice both, because both modalities are now popular. So I think it's worth practicing doing mock interviews, technical mock interviews, both on a whiteboard as well as typing away. And if you don't get an offer, don't worry, try again. You'll eventually land one. I was there, my first interview for Microsoft, things didn't work out. But I made friends with my recruiter, and she believed in me. And after I came back from that first full-time interview, she said, I have this other team, and I'm going to get you an interview with them. I think you're going to do great with this other team. And so a month later, I was back on a plane, back to Redmond, and did a second interview. And that second interview landed me my job. So don't get discouraged. We also have bad days sometimes. You just don't do as well in the interview as you probably could have if all things had been aligned, if you had gotten good sleep, if I don't know, what, you hadn't been so nervous. So don't get discouraged and just keep trying. It'll happen. So let me see what kinds of questions we have. I think this is all I have in terms of content. So now I can look at more questions in the Q&A. How to prepare for internship interviews if you're targeting summer 2023. Yes, so the internship recruiting pipeline definitely starts early, just like with full-time. And so I know that in many companies, the summer internships, 2023 summer internships, people start interviewing in the fall of 2022. And it continues on through the year. But those interviews might happen as early as October, or even, if I believe the career fair is in September, it's just some days away. And some on-campus interviews might happen as part of the career fair. So one should start preparing soon. You might want to dedicate a couple of hours a week, if not more, to just trying some of these coding problems from LeetCode or from books like Cracking the Coding Interview. So you get comfortable. It's really not about memorizing the problems so that like, oh yeah, if they ask me how to reverse a linked list, I know how to do it. Don't fall into that trap. There's no way you can remember all these things. What you want is to get, practice the muscle and get good at analyzing the questions, asking clarifying questions about the questions so that you know what you're going to be coding, discussing the problem solution with your interviewer, and then coding. And coding real code, not pseudocode. You have to code real code. Don't try to get away with like, oh, I'm gonna do some pseudocode. You're just wasting your time. Go straight and write code, and as solid code as possible. But yeah, start preparing now. start looking at those coding interview questions now. Couple of hours a week, I would say, minimum. That way it's not, all happening one day. If our in-major GPA is better than our overall GPA, should we put in the in-major GPA? Yeah, for sure. I think that's interesting. I think that's an extra piece of data that I want to know. Maybe you didn't do so great in English, but you're a great software engineer. So that's okay with me. So and put it in the same line so that way it doesn't take extra space. Yeah, totally something I would do. You want to see leadership positions even if it's not a technical club? I think so. Again, use your judgment that those extracurricular activities are not taking too much space from the projects and experience. If you limit that space to, say, at most 1/4 of the page or 1/5 of the page, and then pick your most relevant, the things that you're most proud about, even if they're not technical, I think that's okay. Leadership, applies in many avenues in life, and I think it's important. So yeah, even if it's not a technical club, I would still put interesting leadership examples for sure. Let's see, would I want to find out if this field of work is right for me? Be a good objective. I think that's somewhat implicit, right? I think we all, when you're trying for an intern, when you're being an intern, yes, maybe the majority of the time is about the company evaluating you and trying to figure out if, hey, this person would do well here. Let's give them a returning offer. But it's also for you. You're also evaluating the company and the culture and the support systems and the work-life balance and all the things that matter to have a happy life, that matter to you, right? And so I think that you don't have to put that in the objective. I think that it's kind of understood that that's going to be part of, what you're going to be doing as an intern. You're going to be trying to see if this is something that fits you, and if this is a company that fits you, and a project style and work-life balance and all that stuff that fits you. So I don't think you have to write it down as part of the objective. It should happen either way. And I'm glad you mentioned this, because then I can tell you, if you get an internship, definitely use that as an opportunity to evaluate whether you like this, that place, you like that company, you like the team, the people, the projects, the culture. Let's see, we have another one here, and I believe we have another half hour, so that's great, because we have we have lots of questions, which is good. Let's see, I've been really confused. How proficient do I need to be in data structures / lead code types of questions? Yeah, so this is all about the technical interview prep. And yes, every company is different, but big tech, if you want Google, Apple, Amazon, Microsoft, I don't know, the FANGs, the MANGs, you're going to get the hard questions in the interview, and some will be harder than others. I do think that Facebook once upon a time used to ask a lot of graph questions, and I'm like, dude, those are some of the hardest things, and you have to like code up 2 answers to 2 different questions in the span of 45 minutes. What? That's like super. You have to be really at the top of your game to think that fast of a solution and then code it up. So practice, because practice is going to make you just arrive faster at solutions, at good algorithmic solutions, and write that code faster as well. So yeah, some companies are a little easier than others, and even a day of interviews in the same company will look very different depending on what kind of interviewers you get. and some companies don't train their interviewers very well, and so the interviewers may not be great people. It happens. So just deal with it as best as you can. Try to ask clarifying questions, and don't lose hope. The best type of interviewer is the one that's there with you, solving the problem with you, and is excited to be there with you solving this problem. And then you can click, you have good chemistry, you get excited, you feed off of each other's energy, and you know, you come up with some solution, you code it up, and you feel great at the end of that interview. And so don't be afraid. But there are not great interviewers out there. Companies are doing better and better at training their interviewers, like not just having them go through classes, but also do reverse shadowing of other interviewers, so that they learn good interviewing skills from other seasoned interviewers in the company, as well as reverse shadowing, which means that when they are doing an interview, somebody's observing them and then giving them feedback at the end of the interview, telling them what they could have done better, which is great. So hopefully you won't run into those things, but depending on which company you want, if you want the hard companies, you're going to have to prepare the hard problems. You're going to have to practice those the harder coding questions. If you don't, then that's cool. You can get away with a little less prep. So it really is up to you. But blanking out in a technical interview, it can happen. And so again, this is where having a seasoned interviewer helps sometimes. And I know this after hundreds of interviews that I've performed. Sometimes a problem is just not the kind of problem that a person can think well about, right? You know, we all have different brains, and that doesn't mean that, you know, I'm never going to hire a person that can solve all the problems in the world. That's just not going to happen. So a good interviewer will notice that, oh, this interview question is not one that jives with this person. It just isn't. And they would be good at catching that early on and coming up with a new question, so that the least amount of time is wasted during the interview, and they can still get signal from the candidate, and they can still get an evaluation of their skills. And that's great. But some interviewers don't notice this and might see you going in the wrong direction and not help you out, and that happens. But I do think if you have that self-awareness that you're having a problem, and after 5-10 minutes, you're like not really seeing the solution, even after asking clarifying questions. So it's like, what if I try this? Do you think I'm going in the right direction? Maybe it is valid to say, hey, I think I'm stuck. Would it be better for us to try a different question, so that you can actually, see me code rather than just fumble around this question for the rest of the interview? Maybe it's worth saying, if you feel comfortable saying such a thing, but don't give up too early either, right? Like, and having that kind of conversation, the interviewer might help and might step in and be like, okay, what are you having trouble with? What's the part that's getting stuck? What's the part that you don't understand? Or what's the part where, and maybe they can give you some extra hints and tips that will unblock you. So it's good to keep talking about if you keep thinking out loud as you're trying to solve the problem, that will let the interviewer know if you are going in the wrong direction, and they will try to rescue you and start giving you some hints or ask you some questions that will push you in the right direction, because it happens. So and also the interview loop usually has more than one coding interview, so you can totally fail one of them but then do well in the other two, and that'll be enough. So don't also feel too bad if one of the coding interviews doesn't go well, because that's why there's multiple. Because we also know that on the other side of the equation, we also know that interviews are not perfect and problems are very different for different people. And so yes, it is very likely that you don't do well in one of the coding interviews, but you do well in the other two, and that still will get you to an offer. We looked at rating language proficiencies and years of experience. Should we include non-CS related community service? Yes, but again, just watch it. Just watch that you don't take too much of the page with things that are not technically related, but I would love to see community service in a resume. You know, it tells me a lot about the person. Just make sure that you pick your best highlights. Let's see. In major GPA, yes, we talked about in major GPA. Work experiences. Okay, so this question is about if you worked in an internship, should that go under work experience or under the project section? I think under work experience. So in the templates that I've worked with in the past, I wouldn't separate the experience and the projects. I would put it all in one place. So maybe a project was for school and maybe a project was for an actual internship, and I would put them all in the same, but be very clear in my description. You know, this was a project for my operating systems class where I built blah, or this was a project when I interned at Microsoft and I did this. But then I looked at these examples from the Carnegie Mellon site, and I saw the separation. And the reason I liked it is because I feel that it makes it very clear, especially to juniors, sophomores, and freshmen that may not have a work internship experience, that it is okay to put projects from school in the resume. So that's the only reason why I have two sections for it, because I want to make it clear that yes, it is okay to put those projects. It is desirable to put those projects. I want to see those projects on the resume as a hiring manager for my interns. So please do put them in. Where you put them in is less important, as long as it's clear. Yeah. Graduate student, is it okay if my resume is more ML centric when I'm applying for a software engineering role? Maybe. So it depends how much ML centric. So if maybe you want to write two resumes, maybe you want to write the resume that's for the software engineering jobs and therefore highlights more of your software engineering experience, and it still includes your ML experience, but it's not as much. And then the ML focused resume that is, that goes all for the ML. But I think I do, again, having been a hiring manager for both backend engineering teams as well as machine learning teams, I would be concerned if all I see is like a super strong statistical modeler, but I don't know if they're going to be able to handle a distributed system, right? And my team needs that, or maybe my team needs both of those qualities. So I don't know. I think it's it also depends on what kind of job you want to land. But if you are interested in software engineer roles, and maybe you want to beef up the software engineering experience for those roles. But I also think it's very good that you have ML experience, because that is definitely a very marketable skill right now. So hopefully that answer helps. Let's see. Is it okay to use icons or symbols on the resume? Yeah, I'm a little less familiar with the automated tools. So this is something that I could go back and ask one of my recruiter friends and maybe get back to Julie and see if she can give you the answer. Hopefully not. Hopefully, I've seen cool resumes where the programming language and technical skills rating is actually done with graphic, with like 5 little circles, and they're filled up. If you're intermediate, it's filled up 3. It says Java 3 out of 5 little circles. If it's C++ 4 out of 5 little circles, and that, in my scenario of you're coming in with your resume to a career fair and somebody has 10 seconds to glance at your resume, I think that's great, because the human glancer will definitely get a lot of information from those little icons and that graphic. But will the machine understand it when it's scanning your resume? Maybe not. So maybe if you are submitting resumes online, try to make them less formative and have the words spelled out. But if you are coming to a career fair and you know that what you're doing is that person is going to be looking at your resume in print, then at that point, maybe the graphic does become useful. But yeah, I'm not sure how smart the automated system will be with icons. or graphics versus written text. Should I only list computer science related skills? Make that the focus. Of course, if you have leadership skills, mentoring skills, other types of skills that definitely would make you a great employee, I do want to know about them, but the focus should be your technical skills. The big part, the 75% to 90% of your resume should be about technical skills. And you can beef up those technical skills even if you're early in your studies, because you can put in coursework, you can put in projects from school, you can put in the website that you build for your neighbor that started a bakery. I don't know. You can definitely put those things in. So try to make sure that the majority of the content in that resume is technical, but yes, that definitely have some space for things that are not technical, that are important life skills that show your unique you, and that you have stuff to contribute to your potential employer. How can we receive more callbacks after cold applying? Yeah, career fair. It really matters how your resume gets in front of a hiring manager or a recruiter, and that's the slide that I'm still showing slides, I think. That's my slide here with the resume submission. Career fair is probably the highest likelihood that you'll get a response, because you'll meet a person face to face, or a referral recruiter contact. So if you are submitting your resume through the website of whatever company it is, let's say Microsoft, I submitted my resume through the Microsoft website, that's very unlikely to get your response. But if you have a friend of a friend that already works at Microsoft, then you can email your friend of a friend and ask them to please submit a referral. Even if they haven't worked with you, even if they didn't take a class with you, they can still do it, because part of the referral system will ask, how much do you know this person? And that's fine. There's incentives for folks inside a company to submit these referrals. Back in the day, I used, if a candidate that I referred, that I submitted a resume internally, got a job and stayed in the job for a period of time, I would get a bonus as a result of my referral. So there's definitely incentives. People want to refer you because, hey, if you land the job and the other person might get a bonus, like a finder's fee. So that would be my next best alternative. If you're just submitting things online, it's not likely to get responses. It's very, very hard to get responses that way, because there's hundreds of thousands of applications happening per day for some of these companies. So yeah, I think career fair, make use of the career fair if you have access to it. If not, make use of referrals. That's probably the best way to get past that barrier. And I think I covered it all. If not, please type in your question again. Hopefully it was useful. It's daunting a little bit, but practice makes perfect. And there's a lot of great technical computer science related jobs out there. So I'm sure you will find one. And the resume is the first part of it, but then how you prepare for your technical interview is also very important. So hopefully some of the tips, I didn't go in super depth, but hopefully some of the tips here will help you also prepare for the interview part of the recruiting process. And if there's no more questions, I don't know, Julia, if you were able to fix your audio, but let's see, we still have a little time if people have questions. Oh, I have one more question. Okay. If I'm applying for software engineering role, then can I get a referral from a product manager? Certainly, yes, you can, for sure. I referred, as a software engineer, I refer product managers. As a product manager, I refer software engineers, for sure, because regardless of role, if you've worked with this person in the past, or if you studied with this person in the past, you have something to say about that person. And just by virtue of that. Yeah, their role, I guess, their role when they're doing the referral doesn't matter as much. So yes, you can definitely go do cross referrals in terms of roles. And I did have good data science friends recommending software engineers, or product manager friends recommending software engineers. And I know, like, hey, if you like working with this person in the past and I like working with you, I definitely want to hear about your referrals. That's not a problem. Yeah. Let's see. I'm going to take a quick pause to see if I missed anything else and give people a chance to submit another question. Internship interview. I think we did, yeah. So let's see, a new one came in. Does ATS look for keywords in resume while filtering them? Any tips for? So I'm not as familiar with the automated processes, but I'm sure that keywords are part of it. But that doesn't mean make your, don't try to optimize your resume for that if it's not a skill that you actually have, right? Like it's then if you're trying to game the system, then your resume might turn into more of a junk page, like those web pages that are trying to game search engines. And by the time it makes it through the automated pass and a human actually looks at it, they'll be like, oh, this resume is crap. No, but hopefully not. Yeah, there might be for sure. I mean, keywords are a way of trying to figure out, does this person have experience in these areas, or knows these programming languages, or has these technical skills. So that might be part of it. But if you write a resume that is true and contains all these sections that I mentioned earlier, with good details about your coding, language experience, and other technical skills and projects that you've worked on, and those projects, the description of the project is meaningful and talks about, did you build a Android app for shopping site for blah, all those keywords will be there as part of your experience. So just I'm hoping that focusing on writing quality descriptions of the projects that you've worked on, whether in school or in an internship setting, will get you the extra points in the automated system that will get that resume through. But again, you guys have the opportunity of attending a career fair, which is not going to be an automated, it's going to be a real person there. And again, the opportunity to try to get a referral through friends of friends, people that have graduated and now work there, or even interns. Oh yeah, for sure. If you have friends that have interned at companies, they too can refer friends, right? And in fact, that's how I got my interview. I mentioned earlier that when I was studying my master's at Virginia Tech, I decided not to apply for an internship in the summer because I wanted to stick around and work on my thesis. But many of my friends did. And most of my friends got internships at Microsoft, and they referred me to their recruiter. And this was something actually that the recruiter proactively asked them, do you have friends that you'd like to recommend me? And thankfully I had like 3 different friends put my name in the in the recruiter's list. So the recruiter contacted me and she's like, I'm coming to the career fair and I want to meet with you. And I'm like, okay, that sounds great. So definitely also use your network. Make sure that if you have friends that have interned in those companies, they tell the recruiter about you. Maybe they can no longer do an internal referral because they're not at the company and therefore have access to the internal site to do the referral, but they have a recruiter and they have their email and they can definitely tell that recruiter about you. And that will put your resume, again, in the eyes of a human rather than try to go through the automated screening. So hopefully that helps. Make sure to work your network as well. And I have a couple more. Yes. Removing links to projects and papers are better. And should we also describe it a bit when we write it down? So if you're listing a project, you want to describe the project, sentence or two, definitely should be clear what the project was about. And then if you want to link to it, I think that's great. And if you can make, make little, like the smaller links better so that they don't take too much space from your resume. Another approach, if you have a lot of links, is to create a website with your portfolio that then has the links to all of those projects that you worked on. If you have that much material, that's awesome. I do know hiring managers that will click on the GitHub and they want to see. And so if you are going to put a link to your GitHub, make sure that it's well organized so that when somebody goes looking for it, they don't be like, oh, I can't find, like, I don't even see where the projects are here or what a good one might be for me to dig into. So I think that links are good. Try to make them small. If there's a lot of links, maybe create a website, a portfolio website that you link to instead. Let's see. And when it comes to papers, I would include papers, but if you have a lot of paper, like if you have a lot of papers and it's going to take half of the page, then maybe not, maybe just pick the best ones. Again, you could potentially create a portfolio site where all your publications are linked, or you can say, best publications, this, and then see this website for all my publications. But then again, if you have that many, I don't know, if you're applying for a research type of role, having more than one page resume is okay, because it's starting to become more of a, not quite a curriculum vitae, but you have more research and therefore you have more papers, and it's fine to have them there. For papers description, hopefully the title of the paper is enough for people to know what the paper is about. If not, maybe do include, like the power sentence from your abstract that will say what it is. I think that's okay. Again, depending on what you're applying. Are you applying for a research role? Are you applying for a software engineering role? Maybe you want to have two versions of your resume, the software engineer version of your resume and the research version of your resume. That way, you get the best of both worlds, and the people hiring you for a software engineering position see more of that meat and get to know you as that role. So maybe consider two different versions of your resume that you will submit to the different types of roles. And then, is it necessary to include works like collaborated on my resume to show that I am a team player, or only focus on my own accomplishments? I will go for the latter, own accomplishments. I think if you worked on a team, yeah, I think you collaborated. It might be, if you think you're a great collaborator, and others might say that about you, maybe that's part of your objective, part of your intro, saying like, I want to find a job in a great collaborative space, because, or I'm a great collaborator and I would like to work on this. Focusing on your role, like, yes, I was the person that led the team. You don't have to lead the team to have an important role, for sure not. Or you can be like, I was the software architect. I was the one that designed the backend, the front end, the mobile app. Focus on what you did, for sure. I don't know if it's likely you've worked in a team, but if, again, you think that collaboration is one of your top skills, then you can work a place where to put that in. Yeah. One more. Thank you for sending questions, everyone. I'm so happy. Will a resume for machine learning engineer be similar to the software design engineer role? Yes and no. So it depends on how much experience you have, for sure. So for industry candidates, it's probably going to be very different, because people that already have a few years of experience will have very different types of projects. And maybe it's more, if it's a lot more, if it's a researchy role, machine learning can happen in a very, very application, hands-on, shipping every day, or more of a basic research type place. So depending on where you are, your resume is going to take that tone depending on your experience. I think that for an internship or a actually, I'm going to take that back. For internship, there can be some differences. some companies, Facebook included, which is where my experience will come from, we do have a separate hiring pipeline for PhD interns. And those PhD interns, 90% of them are machine learning PhD interns. We also have other, well, we also used to have other cool things, but for sure, machine learning is the more popular one. And the PhD intern resume is probably going to look a lot different than the resume of a person looking for a software engineering internship, because maybe it has half of the pages publications, or not half, but like a third of the pages publications, or but in terms of content, or I guess sections, you'll still have projects, you'll still have experience, you'll still have education. You definitely want related coursework because you're showing that you did graduate courses on this part of machine learning versus somebody that may have done a different concentration or a different specialty. So the sections might be similar, the content will be different, and maybe the ratios will be a little bit different. And if you are applying for both types of jobs and you think that you benefit from having two versions of your resume, because then you can work those ratios differently, and highlight more of your machine learning on one version and highlight more of your software engineer on the other version, then please go ahead and do so. I mean, creating a second version of your resume shouldn't be as much work as creating the first one. So hopefully it's just a few tweaks here and there, and now you have two versions that you can send to the different or applications, depending on company and roles available. That would be my suggestion. And how many courses should we add on the resume? Definitely not your entire transcript. It should be computer science related courses. And for example, if you're a freshman, I think you do want to mention that you've done, programming already, or if you're a sophomore, that you already did data structures and maybe other interesting core curriculum. Once you're a senior, it is understood that you've done those things. So maybe you focus on your electives, like, I did graphics and systems and parallel and distributed and whatever, the fun hard ones are, rather than list all of the CS curriculum, because of course you wouldn't be graduating with a computer science degree if you didn't take those classes. So, just use your own judgment on don't make it too big of a section. It should maybe 2 lines, 3 at the most, and you should squeeze the most relevant ones, the most advanced ones, the ones that represent you as well, right? Like maybe you do want to mention this elective here because that's the kind of job you want to get, and so that's why you would mention it, but don't put your entire transcript in there. Yeah. Hopefully that answers the question. And let me check on time. We still 2 minutes. If I'm a master's student, should I add some of my bachelor's level courses? If it's relevant, if you feel that some of the electives, I think here electives is where it matters, because otherwise, if you have a CS degree, then that means you definitely did the core stuff, right? You already did data structures, operating systems, compilers, and like. But maybe there's some electives that showcase more of who you are. Maybe you did electives that were machine learning-y, and now you're doing a master's degree on, on something that's machine learning related, and that's super cool. In fact, that was me. In undergrad, I took some pattern recognition and neural net courses, and so those would have been relevant to mention in my resume at the time when I was applying if I had been applying for an internship in my master's, or when I was applying for a full-time. So pick and choose the ones that differentiate you and that tell the story that you want to tell, that land you that job that you want to land. I wouldn't mention my computer graphics elective if I don't care about getting a computer graphics job, right? So I think that's also how you might decide which ones to include. But yeah, I think it's totally cool to include bachelor's level courses if they're helping you tell the story of who you are and the choices that you've made in your computer science education that could make you this specific type of engineer for the company that you're applying to. All right. Oh, one more. Can you add relevant high school courses? No. I don't know. I don't want to see them. I really don't. I think, I guess if you're a freshman, you're applying for an internship and you don't have that much to put in, maybe, but that I would cut it there. I would definitely, I wouldn't expect to see that from sophomore and beyond. Yeah. Without knowing your specific case, that's going to be my answer. It might be the wrong answer, but that's my reaction to that question. Oh God, we have a couple more. How do you see the possible recession affecting the recurring season in the next 1 year? Oh goodness gracious.
Hi, Beatriz.
Hi.
I know it looks like a really good conversation. I'm so sorry I can't hear it. It is 7:30. If you want to continue, if students want to continue asking questions, that's fine. Or you want to take a few minutes to wrap up, however you want to go with it.
Thank you, Julia. Sorry you can hear me, but yes, I'm going to wrap it up after this question. One more question, because I have to go to another meeting. So otherwise I would hang out here forever. But I did want to see the recession. So a lot of companies, even the big ones, had hiring freezes due to economic recession and other things. And the thing is, it's hard to project growth so that it's always steady. Some growth is always going to ends up happening in little bursts, and that's why all of a sudden it's like, oh, we hire all these people, but now we don't really have investment behind it, so we should probably, slow down. I think that recession the most quickly affects and most immediately affects industry hiring than college hiring. And the reason is that, at least in big tech, maybe not in the smaller companies, but for sure in big tech, the college hiring is a pipeline that big tech likes to keep warm, because it's really hard to get started on it again if you freeze it, and then you have to thaw it, and then it takes like a whole year to get things started again. And so usually, even during a recession, big tech will continue to hire from university. That's my observation, what I've seen in the last 17 years, that those positions will continue and those relationships will continue to be fostered, and the internships will continue to hire. And maybe the internship return offers will be a little less as a result. Maybe it'll affect that, but hopefully not too much. So that's what I've seen in previous bad economic times. So I'm thinking that's what will, be the case. So hopefully it doesn't affect you guys as much as it might affect people in industry trying to switch jobs and trying to hop companies. This is not the time for that, because a lot of companies have frozen their pipelines. But for college hiring, because there is an interest in keeping the flow going steadily, then a lot of the positions continue to be open, and it takes time to train and to get new grads to a productivity stage. So that's also, kind of investing in the future. Even if things are not great economically right now, things will move. And so the companies have to invest with the future in mind. And so my experience has been that it doesn't affect the college or university recruiting pipeline as much as it does affect the industry recruiting pipeline. So hopefully you guys will be okay. I think you will be. Yeah, prepare for your interviews. I hope this was useful. And if there's any specific information I want to convey, I will try to make it available through Julia. Thank you so much. My LinkedIn is at the end of the slides. It's my first name, D-A, and feel free to contact me, send me messages, ask me questions. I'm happy to answer. And it was great being here. Thank you so much for being so active and asking so many questions. I really appreciate it. And I hope you have a great evening and good luck rest of the semester, rest of the year. Thank you.